Okay, can we have a talk? I mean, we've heard in the story of creation, we hear of God sweeping over the waters, the Spirit of God sweeping over like a mighty wind, and then the voice of God coming, commanding there be light, separating the light and the dark, commanding a day and a night. Passage after passage, we see God bringing order out of what had been chaos. I think we need this promise right now because I feel like I need to share my thoughts, what's going on in my own head. Maybe share some of my own shame, my own insecurities, my own vulnerabilities with all this. I don't know if we are, as a community, ready for a conversation of this magnitude. We're still getting to know each other. But I don't know how we can't. I don't know how we can avoid this conversation. I don't even know if somebody with the privilege that I've had in my own personal life should even be talking, but things feel out of control. And well, let's talk. This past week, I've seen a lot of people that I care a lot about hurting. There's some friends of mine, people that I care deeply for who still live in the Atlanta area, who have been expressing their own pain, their own disappointment, their own fear. These are friends of mine from the African American community, leaders not only in the African American community in Atlanta, but these are people that are national figures for our own church. I'm going to refrain from using names because I did not get permissions to tell their stories, and their stories are theirs. But what happened this week is part of my story. And someone I consider a mentor and a teacher, someone with whom I've wanted to work closely with for a long time, shared a photograph this week as part of his Facebook timeline. He was outside in his backyard, sitting in a chair. It's a selfie, one of these shots that is faced right at him. And his face is just utter anguish. I'm going to read for you. I'm going to try to actually read a verbatim of what he has here. And the words simply read, "My 17-year-old son went for an evening run. It's dusk. Never done this before, but on this fraught day and this fraught week, I'm keeping vigil until he gets back home." I started to write him, and I got 3 words in, and I deleted it. I deleted every mumbling word that I tried to get out. I wrote again, and I deleted it. After a third failed attempt to share my thoughts, I simply closed the page. I was silent. Now, for any of you who have been watching the news, have been watching on social media, Dr. King's words on silence have been shared a great deal, that silence is complicity. I was silent there with this person I care about. On another, a Presbytery executive from the same area, I was silent. And 2 other friends who posted, I was silent. I've remained silent, and part of me is feeling just so much shame about it. But it's not coming from a desire to hold my privilege or in a society that makes my friends terrified that their children might go for a run and never come home. It's not even from my desire to keep my own position in society. I mean, I'm sure that those feelings are there and need to be further explored, but anyone who knows me well knows that I talk too much, that I pontificate, that I preach even when I'm not supposed to be preaching. I'm rarely at a loss for words, but this week I've been rendered speechless. When I first began writing to my friend, I was trying to write how I just wanted to hug him. I wanted to let him know that I was praying for him, and I wanted to let him know that all the reasons he has to be afraid, that it's not okay. It's not right that he should fear so deeply and hold so intimately a feeling that I will never have simply because of the color of his own skin. I wanted to tell him my heart breaks. I wanted to tell him that, I've shed tears for him. Right then, as I was trying to get the words just out onto the page, but I realized in that moment that I could not express anything that I would not deem as being trite. And so I was silent. The enormity of the gulf that lies between my experience in life and his can only be crossed by a love that I think has to be bigger than me. There's nothing that I can say to any of these friends of mine that will change their reality. So my own feelings of helplessness right now in this time, my own desire to be vulnerable and open, any of it, nothing comes close, I think, to the fear and the shame, the feelings of separateness that these same friends have had to face their whole lives. It's good, perhaps, that I'm sitting here feeling this powerless. I'm sharing that part of this story with you because I think before I can try to speak, I need to listen. And I've done a lot of listening this week. I started and failed to do a few things this week, including a devotional that was supposed to go out on Thursday. I'm trying to come to grips in my own life with what this means, and the scary thing for me is that I've had practice in this. I was, again, privileged, not only to go to a great undergrad, but at that great undergrad in my senior year, we had a visiting professor who had been at Yale for many, many years, Bell Hooks. And for some of you, you may know her. She is a leading figure in the womanist movement, and she helped me learn. Now, that just simply means that I've had learning up here. My experience, my daily life didn't shift. But during that same time in college, I learned about the talk. I'll just tell you the story again. I'll keep out names. I'm going to call this friend of mine Don. His name wasn't Don. But when I was a sophomore, I served a freshman dormitory as a sophomore advisor. So I lived on their hall, and even though I didn't have the power of all the rules and keeping order and things like that the resident advisor had, I was there to help them get acclimated, to be their friend, to sit with them, to talk with them, to help them through their troubles. Well, one night I had invited this friend, Don, to a party. Don was from West Texas. He'd grown up out there, and this was his first time to really be living outside of that area. And so When I didn't see him, I thought, he's just homesick. I'll pop on over. We'll hang out for a little bit, get the energy going, and then we'll head out. That wasn't the case. When I knocked and opened the door to his room, it was dark and there was music playing in my head, and it was probably me conflating things, but in my head, I definitely remember it was the blues playing. I think it was B.B. King's The Thrill Is Gone, but I saw the shadow. I went in, and Don was sitting on his bed, and you could tell he had been crying. His eyes were puffy and everything. I sat with him for a long time, just didn't say anything. I just sat with him. And when he started telling me about his day, he had experienced that day something I'd never had. He had experienced blatant and yet implicit racism in the classroom. He had faced racism with classmates. He had faced it by being followed by a police officer, I believe, in the town in which we were going to school, while being downtown. And all this was taking place. And he didn't know what to do with it. It was that night that he shared with me the talk. I didn't know about this before then. I had been sheltered and shielded from that part of African American parenting. But he shared with me, and I later learned that this is common, that the conversation that African American families have to have with their own sons and daughters, so that when, not if, but when, they too are targeted or believed to be, because of the color of their skin, guilty of something, or made to be suspect, that they can limit the chances of abuse. They can remain in a passive state. They can even be trained and taught to take abuse to avoid retaliation. And so that was the night that I learned about that talk. Things are so chaotic right now. And I have realized the need as a parent to have a different talk with my kids. I do not need to have a discussion with my children to protect them from society. I do not have to have a conversation with my son or daughter about the way in which they speak to police officers, or the way in which they speak to any public official or any person of authority. Instead, I started a conversation with my own daughter a couple of weeks ago. And we had had other similar discussions at various points, but an intentional discussion. The news had been on, and we were sitting on the back porch on our deck, and she brought it up. She said, "Daddy, why is the news so angry? Why are those people so angry? Why are they walking? Why are they holding signs?" I fumbled for an answer, and I hope I gave her one that doesn't scar her too badly. But as we talked, what became clear was we had a discussion about how, just in the same way that Daddy's hair is darker than hers and Dad's skin is a little darker than hers, that everybody's a little different, and everybody's skin tone or eye color or hair is a little bit different. And that for members of our society that produce more melanin in their skin, that for a lot of really hard and complicated reasons, they live a different life, and one that could even mean life and death. And we had that discussion. And I love her response because it gives me hope for the future. Her response was, "That's not okay, Daddy." And then she told me about a story in preschool before we moved here to Westfield, of being in preschool, and it was nap time, and she and another little boy always shared the same mat. She even let him use her toys if she had them. He was the son of their teacher, an African-American family. And for her, it was just the most ridiculous thing on earth. And I hope that the world does not rob her of that truth. I'm sharing my story with you today because for me, I am not in a place right now where I believe that I can stand and speak truth to power. I don't believe that I'm in a place where I can be the authority. I don't believe that I'm in a place other than learning and listening. I'm trying to come alongside of people. I'm trying to use, yes, my position, but my life to follow where I hope to see God in the world. And so that brings me back a little bit to this passage in our story today. The focus becomes so easy on God bringing order almost magically. God bringing order out of the chaos. God says, and. But if we take a close look, there's something really beautiful that I think is connected to how we understand God and often misunderstand God. When we say that God is three in one, we are talking about God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, as has been said in other times and other places, bound together in perfect union by love. And even in this story, we get glimpses of how we see and understand God right in the very opening lines of the Bible. And I understand that many other traditions, a handful even in Christianity, but of other traditions in the Abrahamic faiths, don't see it the way that I'm describing it. I completely understand and humbly just say that in our tradition, we understand the same one God. But understand it differently, or understand this God differently. So God's Spirit, as we talk about it, this mighty wind rushing over the chaos, speaks. When we talk about the Word became flesh, when we talk about Jesus of Nazareth from John's Gospel, that same Word, that same reason of God, the ability to speak, the ability to think, the ability to make things happen, being the Son. So here we have God, and Father and Son and Holy Spirit are all present before anything takes place. And from this love, from this being bound up in perfect relationship, everything in creation pours forth. The chaos is ordered and organized to make room for life and for beauty, for the green that we love so much of spring and summer, for the animals, for ourselves, stamped, each of us, with that same image of God. And the way that I see that in this story and in the life that we're living right now with all the chaos around us is that when we talk about being stamped with the image of God, that image is that we need relationships, we need each other. And not only the relationships that we choose, but those that are difficult to muster and difficult to maintain, and with people who have very different experiences than ours. I've shared my story and some of my ponderings and thoughts on this passage today, and I don't pretend at all to assume that our congregation and the people that are watching this now are all on the same page. I don't. We're coming from different places, we have different experiences, we have different lives. But it is very much my hope that together, over months, over days, over weeks, over the years, that we will begin to see where God is in the chaos, where Christ is speaking most clearly, where Christ is calling us to be a part of God's redemptive work in the world. For me, it starts with having a new talk with my children. I hope it doesn't end there. And today, on this day where it feels like there's chaos all around us, I think the thing we need more than anything is to be held in communion with God first. And it's a good thing because today we get to celebrate that. And I ask that as we begin to prepare ourselves for communion in just a few moments, that we remember that it's this word communion that means this co-union with God, being brought into relationship, being held in love and in grace. So for all of us who are hurting, all of us who are confused, all of us who don't know where we're going next, even those of us who are perplexed about why we're having this discussion in the first place, for all of us, I ask at this time that we be fed, that we be loved, given grace, and called to new life. My friends, peace be with you.